My mother looked me dead in the eye and whispered, "Don't come back," over a debt that wasn't mine. She thought she was discarding me, but she was actually handing me the key to a 20-year-old lie. I swear the coldest words I've ever heard came from my own mother's mouth, and they cut deeper than the icy wind whipping through the streets of Portland. It was a rainy Thursday night, the kind where the drizzle soaks into your bones and refuses to let you warm up. I had just dragged myself home from a grueling double shift at the hospital. My scrubs were stained with things I didn't want to think about. My feet were throbbing in my sneakers, and my mental battery was flashing red. As a medical billing coordinator, I spend 12 hours a day fighting insurance companies and explaining deductibles to terrified families. It's nothing glamorous, but it pays the rent for the 2-bedroom apartment I share with a roommate. It keeps me afloat. Or so I thought. I just wanted a hot shower and silence. Instead, I got an ambush. My mother, Deborah, was waiting on my porch like a gargoyle guarding a cathedral. She was leaning against the railing, unbothered by the damp mist, her arms crossed tight over her chest. The moment my headlights swept over her, my stomach dropped through the floorboards of my Toyota. She didn't visit, she inspected. She didn't call just to chat. She collected. I parked and walked up the steps, gripping my bag like a shield. "Don't come back." That's what she said the moment I unlocked the door. No greeting, no "Hello, Jenna," no "How was work?" Just that command, delivered with the flat affect of a judge sentencing a criminal. At first, I let out a dry, humorless laugh because I thought it was another one of her dramatic tantrums. Mom thrived on chaos. If there wasn't a crisis, she would manufacture one. I pushed the door open, expecting her to stay outside, but she stepped inside right on my heels, invading my sanctuary. Her eyes immediately began darting around the living room, scanning my furniture, my television, even the rug, like she was an appraiser at a pawn shop. "You're done," she said, her voice rising now that we were inside. "If you won't help this family, you don't deserve to be part of it." I dropped my keys on the small console table and turned to face her. I'm a grown black woman, 30 years old, paying my own bills, yet she still knew exactly how to make me feel like a scolding child. "What are you talking about, Mom?" "What happened?" But I already knew. Deep down, I knew. This was about Tyler. Again. "Your brother needs you, and you're acting like a stranger," she spat. Tyler, the golden child. The boy who could do no wrong, even when he was doing everything wrong. My brother had called me 2 days ago, slurring his words, bragging about a party in Vancouver, Washington. "He crashed the car, didn't he?" I asked, my voice trembling with exhaustion. Mom didn't flinch. "He made a mistake. It was slippery. He hydroplaned." "Was he drunk?" I asked. "He was stressed, Jenna. He has so much pressure on him." She waved her hand dismissively, as if a DUI was a minor social faux pas. "The car is totaled. The other driver is threatening to sue if we don't settle the damages privately." "The repair bill and the settlement, it's almost $9,000. I stared at her. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. And I need you to write the check," she said, as casually as if she were asking for a cup of sugar. "Tyler has a future. He can't have a record. You have this job, you have savings, you're the steady one. You can absorb this." I felt the heat rise up my neck. I worked 60 hours a week. I drove a 10-year-old car. I clipped coupons. Tyler was 26, unemployed by choice, and spent his weekends partying on Mom's dime. "No," I said. The word hung in the air. Mom's face twisted. "Excuse me?" I said, "No, I am done, Mom. I paid his rent 3 months ago. I paid his court fees last year. I am done being the emergency ATM for his bad decisions." That's when her face went blank. The heat vanished, replaced by a terrifying coldness. She walked over to the hook by the door where we kept the spare key, the one she demanded I give her for emergencies, though she mostly used it to snoop when I wasn't home. She snatched it off the hook. She turned to me, her hand clenching the metal so hard her knuckles turned white. "Don't come back," she repeated, quieter this time, but with more venom. "Don't call. Don't show up for holidays. Don't text your brother. If you turn your back on your blood over money, you are dead to us. Mom, please be reasonable. You're selfish, Jenna. You always have been, just like your father. The mention of my father, a man I hadn't seen since I was 8, a man she swore was a monster, was the final slap. She opened the door, the rainy wind rushing in, and stepped out. Goodbye. Jenna. She slammed the door. She didn't look back. No hesitation. No apology. She just walked out of my life because I refused to light myself on fire to keep her favorite child warm. I stood there for 20 minutes, staring at the door. The silence was deafening. I should have been crying. I should have been chasing after her. But as the shock wore off, I realized something strange. My shoulders dropped. My jaw unclenched. She took the key. She cut the cord. The next morning, I did something I'd been too scared to do for years. I called a locksmith. Then I sat down with my phone. I blocked Mom. I blocked Tyler. I even changed my number after she had one of her church friends call me to scream about how I was turning my back on my heritage and my blood. For the first time in my entire life, I sat in my apartment, listening to the rain, and I felt free. But I had no idea that by closing that door, I had unlocked a vault of secrets my mother had killed to keep hidden. I thought the money was the issue. I didn't know the money was just the beginning of a war she was terrified of losing. If you've ever had a toxic family member push you to the breaking point, or if you know what it feels like to be the responsible one who always gets used, I need you to take a second right now. Hit that like button and subscribe, because the betrayal I'm about to uncover is going to make your blood boil. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And have you ever had to cut off your own family to save yourself? Let's talk about it. The silence that followed the lockout was intoxicating. For 3 weeks, my phone didn't vibrate with crisis alerts. My bank account stayed stable. I slept through the night without waking up to panic attacks about Tyler's latest legal trouble. I started to believe that the worst was over, that the hardest part was just the initial cut. I was wrong. The silence wasn't peace. It was the deep breath before the plunge. I came home on a Tuesday evening, my arms full of groceries, actual groceries, not just instant noodles, because I finally had money to spend on myself. I hummed a tune as I walked down the hallway of my apartment building, but the song died in my throat when I reached my door. A plain white envelope was pushed halfway under the jamb. It wasn't mail. The postman had already come and gone, and he always used the metal box in the lobby. This had been hand-delivered. I dropped the grocery bags. The sound of glass jars clinking against each other, echoing in the quiet hall. I crouched down and pulled the envelope free. There was no stamp, no return address, just one word written in the center, Jenna. The handwriting stopped my heart. It was sharp, slanted, and precise. It was handwriting I hadn't seen in 22 years, but I recognized it as viscerally as I recognized my own face in the mirror. It was my father's. My dad, Marcus, had left when I was 8. One day he was there, making me pancakes and teaching me how to ride a bike, and the next, he was gone. Mom told me he didn't care enough to fight for me. She said he chose a new life, a new woman, and freedom over his own daughter. For 2 decades, I carried that rejection like a stone in my gut. My fingers trembled as I tore the flap open. Inside were 2 things: a single-page handwritten letter and a photocopy of a document from the Multnomah County Court, dated 20 years ago. I read the letter first. Jenna, I heard what your mother told you. Word travels fast in this family, even when you're exiled. You deserve the truth. There are things she never wanted you to know. I'm back in Oregon. I'm coming back to talk, if you'll let me. My breath hitched. I unfolded the court document. It was a petition for joint custody. I scanned the legalese, my eyes widening with every line. It showed that my father hadn't just walked away. He had sued for visitation. He had fought for shared custody. But the filing included a summary of judgment denying him access based on sworn statements of instability provided by the mother. There were logs of him showing up for scheduled visits, only to be turned away at the door. He hadn't abandoned me. He had been erased. The hallway began to spin. My entire childhood, the narrative of the poor, struggling mother and the deadbeat dad, was a fabrication. She had blocked him. She had lied to the court. And she had lied to me every single day for 20 years. I looked back at the letter. At the very bottom, in ink that looked pressed down hard, he had written one final warning. If she tells you anything soon, don't believe her. She's desperate. Desperate for what? I stood up, clutching the paper, suddenly feeling very exposed in the hallway. I unlocked my door and bolted the locks behind me, my heart hammering against my ribs. I thought cutting my mother off was the end of the drama, but looking at the papers in my hand, I realized I had just walked onto a battlefield I didn't even know existed. The next day, the siege began. I had barely slept. The image of that court document burned into my retinas. I went to work on autopilot, my eyes gritty and my nerves frayed. But my mother wasn't about to let me have a quiet breakdown. She started calling around 10 a.m. Since I had blocked her number, she began using burner phones or borrowing friends' devices. My phone buzzed on my desk every 15 minutes like a ticking time bomb. I made the mistake of listening to the first few voicemails during my lunch break. It was a masterclass in manipulation. Beep. Jenna, pick up. We're worried sick. You can't just disappear. Her voice was trembling, pitched high to sound fragile. Beep. I raised you better than this. After everything I sacrificed? You're going to let a few dollars destroy this family? Now she was angry, the fragility replaced by the sharp edge of a guillotine. Beep. If you don't call me back by noon, I'm calling the police to do a wellness check. I mean it, Jenna. A threat disguised as concern. She was cycling through emotions like she was spinning a roulette wheel, hoping one of them would land on my guilt trigger. But for the first time, the chamber was empty. The court document had severed the nerve. I didn't feel guilty. I felt hunted. Then came the text from Tyler. It popped up from a number I didn't recognize, but the tone was unmistakable. Mom said to warn you. Dad found you. He's dangerous, Jenna, seriously. He's the reason we had to move when you were little. Don't meet him. He'll hurt you like he hurt Mom. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the delete button. Dangerous. That was the word they always used. Unstable. Volatile. But the man who wrote me that letter sounded calm. He sounded lucid. Tyler's text didn't feel like a brother protecting his sister. It felt like a soldier relaying orders from a general. It felt strategic. If Dad was so dangerous, why was Mom's reaction to scream at me rather than protect me? Panic radiated off them, but it wasn't fear for my safety. It was fear of what I might hear. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't them. I'm staying at a small Airbnb near Gresham. I know this is a lot to process. I'm not asking you to trust me yet. I'm just asking for 30 minutes. Coffee, public place, you choose. Dad. He wasn't screaming. He wasn't threatening to call the cops. He was giving me the one thing Mom never did, a choice. I looked at the two messages side by side. On one hand, the family that demanded my money and demanded my silence. On the other, the ghost who claimed he had been fighting to reach me for 20 years. The truth was pulling me toward him like gravity. I typed a reply to Dad before I could talk myself out of it. I need time. Don't come to my apartment. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. I thought I could control the pace of this. I thought I could keep them separate. Mom's chaos on one side, Dad's mystery on the other, until I figured out who was lying. But I underestimated how far Mom would go to stop the reunion. By the time I woke up the next morning, the war had moved from my phone to my finances, and that's when the real bomb dropped. Monday morning hit with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. I woke up with a knot in my stomach, the kind that usually signals a bad day before it's even started. I sat up, rubbed the sleep from my eyes, and reached for my phone to do my routine check. Weather, email, bank account. I needed to pay the electric bill, so I opened the banking app, waiting for the little loading wheel to spin. I mentally calculated my balance. I should have had roughly $4,300. It wasn't a fortune, but it was my safety net. It was my if the car breaks down fund, my first month's rent on a new place fund. It was the only thing standing between me and total ruin. The screen refreshed. Available balance, $112.14. I blinked. I actually rubbed the screen with my thumb, thinking it was a smudge or a glitch. I closed the app and reopened it. $112.14. The air left my lungs in a sharp whoosh. My hands went ice cold. I tapped on the transaction history, my fingers shaking so bad I hit the wrong button twice. Finally, the list loaded. Pending transfer. 4th on 188, 0 recipient. Deborah Mitchell. I stared at the name. My mother. No, I whispered. No, no, no. I scrambled out of bed, pacing the room, clutching the phone like it was burning me. How? I had blocked her. I had changed the locks. I had cut her off. Then I remembered. When I was 17, right before I went to college, she made me sign a terrifying amount of paperwork. One of them was an automatic transfer authorization form linking our accounts for emergencies. She said it was so she could send me money if I got stranded. I had forgotten about it. I hadn't used that account link in a decade, but she hadn't forgotten. She had waited. She had waited until I defied her, and then she had reached into my life through a door I forgot to lock and gutted me. I collapsed onto the edge of my bed. The betrayal hit harder than the poverty. This wasn't just about the money. It was a punishment. It was a message. You think you're free? You own nothing unless I say you do. I felt sick. Physically, violently sick. I was about to call the bank, to scream fraud, to see if I could stop the transfer, when my phone buzzed in my hand. I looked down, expecting a gloating text from Mom. It was Dad. She took your money, didn't she? Jenna, you need to meet me today. Things are going to get worse before they get better. I froze. The phone nearly slipped from my sweat-slicked fingers. I hadn't told a soul. I had found out 30 seconds ago. How did he know? Was he watching my bank account too? Was he working with her? Or had he simply lived through this exact same war before? Fear spiked in my chest, hot and sharp. I was trapped between a mother who stole my future and a father who seemed to know my present before I did. I typed back, my thumbs heavy. How do you know? Because, he replied instantly, she did the exact same thing to me right before she filed the restraining order. Meet me. The Coffee Bean on 10th. 6 p.m., please. I lowered the phone. I didn't know which parent I should actually fear, but I knew one thing. I was broke, I was cornered, and I had nothing left to lose. I was going to meet him. I spent the rest of the workday in a fog. I managed to call the bank on my lunch break, but the news was grim. Because my name was on the authorization form and I had technically granted her access years ago, it wasn't fraud in the criminal sense. It was a civil dispute. I could sue her, sure, but that would take months and money I no longer had. The money was gone. By 5:45 p.m., I was sitting in my car a block away from the Coffee Bean on 10th. The rain had returned, drumming a nervous rhythm on the roof of my Toyota. I checked the rearview mirror. I looked tired. Dark circles under my eyes, lips pressed into a thin line. I looked like a woman who had been hollowed out. I took a deep breath, grabbed my umbrella, and stepped into the downpour. The coffee shop was warm and smelled of roasted beans and damp wool. I scanned the room, my heart thumping against my ribs like a trapped bird. I didn't know what he looked like now. The last time I saw him, he had a thick black mustache and no gray hair. Then I saw him. He was sitting at a small table in the corner, nursing a black coffee. He was older, obviously. His hair was salt and pepper, cut short, and the mustache was gone, replaced by a neatly trimmed beard. He wore a simple flannel shirt and a rain jacket. He looked normal. He looked like any other Portland dad waiting out the rain. He must have felt my eyes because he looked up. For a second, neither of us moved. He stood up slowly, his hands resting on the table as if to steady himself. He didn't rush toward me. He didn't try to hug me. He just nodded, a look of profound relief washing over his face. I walked over, keeping the table between us. "Jenna," he said. His voice was deeper than I remembered, rougher. "Thank you for coming." "I'm not here for a reunion," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I was still defensive, still waiting for the trap to snap shut. "I'm here because you seem to know things about my life that you shouldn't." He gestured to the empty chair. "Please, sit." I sat, keeping my bag on my lap. "How did you know about the money?" Marcus sighed, running a hand over his face. "Because Deborah has a playbook, Jenna. She doesn't improvise. When she feels control slipping, she strikes at your resources. She cripples you so you have to crawl back." He reached into a leather satchel by his feet and pulled out a thick manila folder. He slid it across the table. "I didn't just leave," he said quietly. "I was evacuated." I frowned, looking from the folder to his face. "What does that mean?" "Open it." I opened the folder. It wasn't just court documents, it was police reports, old ones, dated from the year I turned 8. Incident report, domestic disturbance. Complainant, Marcus Mitchell. Suspect, Deborah Mitchell. Description, suspect attacked complainant with a kitchen knife following a dispute over finances. Minor lacerations reported. I stared at the paper. "Mom, attacked you?" "She told everyone I was the violent one," he said, his eyes sad. "She told the courts I was unstable. But Jenna..." "Look at the date on the bank statement underneath." I flipped the page. A copy of a joint bank account statement from 20 years ago. Withdrawal. 15,000 growlers, closing balance. Date, 2 days before the police report. "She drained our savings," he whispered. "Then she provoked a fight, called the cops, and told them I was threatening her because I was broke and angry. She used the system to remove me, and she used my money to hire the lawyer who sealed the custody records." My head was spinning. The story I had been told my entire life was flipping upside down. Why? Why would she do that? "Because I wanted to leave," he said simply. "I told her I wanted a divorce. Deborah doesn't let people leave, Jenna. She destroys them instead." He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "She's doing the same thing to you. Tyler is the golden child because he's weak. He needs her. You're independent. You're strong. That threatens her. And now that you've cut her off, she's going to escalate. The money was just the first shot." "Escalate how?" I asked, a chill running down my spine. "She's not just going to try to broke you," he said. "She's going to try to break you. Legally, socially. She won't stop until you're back in that house under her roof, begging for her help." As if on cue, my phone buzzed on the table. I looked down. It was a notification from my landlord. "Jenna, I just got a very disturbing call from your mother regarding illegal activity in the apartment. We need to talk immediately." I looked up at my father. The horror on my face must have said it all. "She's already started," he said. "Illegal activity?" I choked out the words, staring at the screen until the letters blurred. "She told my landlord I'm doing something illegal." Marcus didn't look surprised. He just took a sip of his coffee, his eyes hard. "Let me guess. Drugs or running a business out of the unit?" "She knows I work at a hospital," I said, my voice rising in panic. "She knows I don't do drugs. I don't even drink on weeknights." "It doesn't matter what's true, Jenna. It matters what scares people. Landlords are terrified of liability. If a concerned mother calls and says her daughter is storing narcotics or running a scam, they don't wait for proof. They evict first and ask questions later." He reached across the table and gently tapped my hand. "She wants you homeless. If you have no money and no roof, where do you go? You go home to Mom." The logic was sick, twisted, and undeniable. It was a siege. She was cutting off my supply lines one by one. "I have to go," I said, grabbing my keys. "I have to talk to Mr. Henderson before he posts a notice on my door." Not alone, Marcus said, standing up. I hesitated. Dad, I barely know you. Walking in with a man my landlord has never seen might not help. Jenna, listen to me. She didn't just make a phone call. If I know Deborah, she sent Tyler to plant something. Or she sent photos of something that looks damning. You need a witness, and you need someone who knows her game. The mention of Tyler made my stomach turn. Tyler. He had a key. I had changed the locks after I kicked them out. But had I given him a spare before that? No. But the window on the fire escape, the lock was faulty. I had asked Tyler to fix it months ago. He never did. Okay, I breathed. Okay. Come with me. We drove separately, but he followed close behind my Toyota, his headlights cutting through the rain like a guardian. For the first time in 20 years, I didn't feel like I was fighting the world by myself. When we pulled up to my apartment complex, Mr. Henderson was already standing outside my door, arms crossed, talking to a police officer. My heart hammered against my ribs. A cop. She had called the cops on me. I parked and practically fell out of the car. Marcus was right behind me. "Officer, wait!" I yelled, running up the wet pavement. Mr. Henderson looked at me with a mix of pity and disappointment. "Jenna, I'm sorry. Your mother called. She said she was worried you were overdosing. She said you've been spiraling." "That is a lie," I screamed, the frustration finally boiling over. "I am a medical professional. I am at work all day." The officer, a young guy who looked bored, stepped forward. "Ma'am, we received a call about a potential disturbance in narcotics. We need to check the premises." "She's swatted you," Marcus said, stepping up beside me. His voice was calm, authoritative. "Officer, my name is Marcus Mitchell. This is my daughter. She is currently the victim of financial theft and harassment by the caller, Deborah Mitchell. We were actually on our way to the precinct to file a report against her." The cop paused, looking from Marcus to me. The narrative shifted. He wasn't looking at a junkie anymore. He was looking at a family dispute. "Harassment?" the officer asked. "She drained my bank account this morning," I said, pulling up the app on my phone and thrusting it toward him. "Look, zero balance. She's trying to ruin me because I wouldn't pay for my brother's DUI. Mr. Henderson's eyebrows shot up. "DUI? Check the apartment," I said, unlocking the door and shoving it open. "Tear it apart. You won't find anything but bills she made sure I can't pay." The officer did a cursory walkthrough. He checked the bathroom, the bedroom, the kitchen. Nothing. No drugs, no needles. Just a clean, modest apartment. He walked back out, tipping his cap. "False alarm. Sorry for the trouble, folks. Looks like a civil matter." Mr. Henderson let out a breath. "Jenna, I didn't know." "She's lying to everyone," I said, my voice shaking. Marcus put a hand on my shoulder. It was heavy and warm. "She missed," he whispered to me. "This time, she missed." But as the cop car drove away, my phone buzzed again. It was Tyler. "Mom's really mad the cops didn't arrest you. She says if you don't come home tonight, she's going to call the hospital board tomorrow. Something about HIPAA violations. You better call her, Jenna." I stared at the text. My job. She was going for my license. Marcus read the text over my shoulder. His face went deadly still. "We need to stop playing defense," he said. "It's time to hit back." HIPAA violations? I paced the small length of my living room, my hands pulling at my hair. "Dad, that's a career ender. Even an investigation puts me on unpaid leave. I don't have savings to survive unpaid leave." Marcus sat on my couch, the calmness of his demeanor clashing with the frantic energy in the room. He was scrolling through his phone, looking for something. "She's bluffing, Jenna. Or at least, she's trying to scare you into submission before she pulls the trigger," he said. "She doesn't actually want you fired. If you're fired, you can't pay Tyler's debt. She wants you terrified. She wants you to think she holds the keys to your survival." "She does," I yelled, gesturing to the empty bank app on my phone. "She has the money. She has the house. Now she has my job in her crosshairs." "She has leverage," Marcus corrected, standing up. So we need better leverage. He walked over to me and held out his phone. On the screen was a recording app. Oregon is a one-party consent state for electronic communications, he said, his voice low and steady. That means as long as you know the call is being recorded, she doesn't have to. I stared at the phone. You want me to call her? I want you to get her to admit it, Marcus said. Right now, it's a civil dispute over a joint account. But if she admits that she's threatening your job unless you pay a debt that isn't yours, that's extortion, that's blackmail, that's a felony. My stomach churned. The idea of hearing her voice again made me want to vomit. But the alternative was waiting for HR to call me in the morning to escort me out of the building. What do I say? I whispered. Play dead, Marcus said, his eyes hard. Be the daughter she thinks she broke. Beg. Apologize. Ask her what she wants to stop the attacks. She's arrogant, Jenna. She won't be able to resist gloating. I took a deep breath, sat down at my kitchen table, and dialed the number. Marcus hit record on his phone and set it next to mine on speaker. The phone rang 3 times, then a click. Well, Deborah's voice purred. I was wondering when you'd come to your senses. I squeezed my eyes shut, channeling every ounce of exhaustion I felt. Mom, please stop. The police were here. My landlord is threatening to kick me out. I can't take this. You brought this on yourself, Jenna, she said, her voice dripping with self-righteousness. You turned your back on your brother. I know, I choked out. I'm sorry. Just, please don't call the hospital. If I lose my job, I can't help anyone. Please. There was a pause. I held my breath. Are you going to pay the bill? She asked sharply. I don't have the money. You took it all. The bill is $9,000, Jenna. I took $4,000. You still owe $5,000. You find that money, you pay Tyler's legal fees, and maybe I'll forget about the little rumor regarding your patient files. I looked at Marcus. He nodded vigorously, mouthing, one more step. So if I pay the $5,000, I said clearly, you won't report me for the fake violations? Pay the money and the problem goes away, she said. Don't pay, and you won't work in this state again. It's your choice, honey. I hung up. Marcus stopped the recording. He looked at me, a grim smile touching his lips. We got her. Now what? I asked, my heart pounding. Now, Marcus said. We go to the hospital first. We play this for your HR director preemptively. We immunize you. And then we go to the police station. I felt a surge of hope. The first in days. We had a plan. We had a weapon. But as we grabbed our coats to leave, my phone pinged with an email notification. It was from my work address. Subject: urgent, immediate suspension, pending investigation. I froze. My blood ran cold. Dad, I whispered, staring at the screen. She didn't wait. Marcus looked at the email, his face darkening. She called them before you called her. I'm suspended, I said, the room spinning. I'm already suspended. Marcus grabbed his keys. Then we don't go to the police, we go to the source. What? Where? Tyler, he said. He's the weak link. If Deborah won't back down, we make the golden child break. Tyler was predictable. If he wasn't at Mom's house, he was at the Rusty Nail, a dive bar just across the bridge in Vancouver. It was where he went to celebrate his victories, and apparently getting his sister suspended was a victory worth a round of shots. We pulled into the gravel lot. The rain was coming down in sheets now, blurring the neon sign. Let me do the talking, Marcus said, turning off the ignition. He doesn't respect you, Jenna. He sees you as a resource. He needs to see a threat. I nodded, my stomach in knots. He hasn't seen you since he was 6. Then he's in for a surprise. We walked in. The air smelled of stale beer and popcorn. I spotted him immediately in a booth near the back, laughing loudly with 2 guys I didn't recognize. He looked flushed, happy, carefree. Rage, hot and blinding, surged through me. I marched over, Marcus a silent shadow behind me. You think this is funny? I slammed my hand on the table, making the pitcher of beer jump. Tyler jumped, splashing beer onto his shirt. He looked up, his eyes glassy. A smirk curled his lip when he saw it was me. "Jenna, came to buy a round? Oh, wait, you're broke, aren't you?" His friend snickered. "Mom told me you got suspended. Sucks to be you." "You helped her," I hissed. "You helped her fabricate lies about me to the board." "I didn't do anything." Tyler shrugged, leaning back. "I just forwarded what Mom told me to. Family supports family, right? Maybe if you paid the bill, she'd call them back and say it was a misunderstanding." "That's extortion, Tyler," a deep voice rumbled. Tyler frowned, looking past me for the first time. He squinted at the man in the rain jacket. Marcus stepped into the dim light. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed, and he looked terrifyingly calm. "Hello, son." The color drained from Tyler's face so fast I thought he might faint. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Dad?" "Get up," Marcus said. It wasn't a request. Tyler scrambled out of the booth, nearly tripping over his own feet. His friends went silent, sensing the shift in atmospheric pressure. Marcus led us to a quiet corner near the exit, away from prying ears. You're supposed to be in California," Tyler stammered, looking like a terrified child. "Mom said you were in rehab." "Mom says a lot of things," Marcus said coldly, "like telling Jenna she'd ruin her career if she didn't pay your drunk driving debt. We have that recorded, Tyler. That's a felony. Class B, extortion." Tyler's eyes darted between us. I didn't say anything on the phone." "No," I cut in. "But you sent the email, the tip-off to the hospital. Dad checked the metadata on the header, Tyler. It came from an IP address registered to Mom's house. If we hand that recording and your text messages to the police, you're an accessory. You go to jail right alongside her." "I can't go to jail," Tyler squeaked. "I have a probation hearing for the DUI next week." "Then you're going to help us fix this," Marcus said, stepping closer, boxing him in. "We need proof that the patient data leak was faked. We need the original files she used to doctor the evidence." Tyler was shaking now. She did it on her iPad. She downloaded a template and filled in random names. She saved it to her cloud." "Where's the iPad?" I asked. "In the safe. In her bedroom." "You have the code," Marcus stated. It wasn't a question. Tyler knew Mom's codes. She made him do all her tech setup. Tyler swallowed hard. If she finds out, she gets mad," Marcus said, leaning down to look him in the eye. "If we find out you didn't help, you go to prison. Choose, Tyler." Tyler looked at his feet. He looked at the door. Then he looked at me, defeated. 1985, he whispered. "The code is the year she married you." The irony was sickening. "We're going to the house," Marcus said. "You're coming with us. You're going to open the door, and you're going to keep her distracted while Jenna gets the iPad." "She's home?" I asked. "She's celebrating," Tyler muttered. "She's drinking wine and waiting for you to call back begging." "Let's go," Marcus said, grabbing Tyler's arm. We walked out into the rain. I was terrified, but for the first time, I wasn't the victim. I was the one holding the match, and we were heading straight for the powder keg. The house was dark, except for the living room window, which glowed with the warm, deceptive light of a family home. I sat in the back seat of Marcus's rental car, staring at the structure that had been my prison for 18 years. "Okay," Marcus said, turning to look at Tyler in the passenger seat. "Here's the plan. You go in. You tell her you're hungry or you need money, whatever usually gets her attention. Get her into the kitchen. Keep her talking." Tyler looked like he was about to vomit. "What if she hears you?" "She won't," I said, "because you're going to turn the TV up. Tell her you want to watch the game highlights." Tyler nodded weakly, fumbling with the door handle. Okay. He got out and trudged up the driveway. We watched as he unlocked the front door and disappeared inside. A moment later, the shadow in the living room window moved. We waited 2 minutes, then 3. "Now," Marcus whispered. We slipped out of the car. I had my own key, the one she thought she had taken back. I had made a copy years ago and hidden it in a magnetic box under the porch railing, just in case I ever got locked out as a kid. I prayed it was still there. My fingers brushed against cold metal. Yes. I unlocked the front door silently. The sound of the TV blaring football commentary covered the click of the latch. I could hear Mom's voice from the kitchen, shrill and lecturing. Ungrateful, just like her father. But she'll break, Ty. They always break when they get hungry. I flinched, but Marcus nudged me forward. He stayed by the front door as a lookout. I crept down the hallway toward her bedroom. The floorboards creaked under my weight, and I froze every time, my heart hammering like a jackhammer against my ribs. I reached her bedroom door. It was open. I slipped inside. The room smelled of her perfume, lavender and something sharp, like acetone. I went straight to the closet where the small safe was bolted to the floor. I punched in the code, 1985. Beep. The light turned green. I pulled the handle. Inside was a stack of cash, some jewelry, and the iPad. I grabbed the tablet. It was locked, but I knew her passcode. It was Tyler's birthday. Of course it was. I typed it in. The screen unlocked. I navigated to her photos. There it was, screenshots of a fake patient database with timestamps from yesterday, and in her Notes app, a draft of the email sent to the hospital board detailing exactly what lies to tell. I had it. I had everything. I quickly airdropped the files to my phone and emailed them to Marcus for backup. Jenna? The voice came from the doorway. I spun around. Mom was standing there. She wasn't in the kitchen. She was holding a glass of red wine, her eyes wide with shock that quickly curdled into rage. "What are you doing?" she hissed. I clutched the iPad to my chest, getting the truth. She lunged at me. For a woman of 50, she was fast. She grabbed my arm, digging her nails in, trying to snatch the tablet. The wine glass shattered on the floor, splashing red liquid everywhere, like blood. "Give it to me," she screamed. "You thief, you ungrateful little brat." "Let go," I shouted, shoving her back. She stumbled but regained her balance, her face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. "I will ruin you. I will make sure you end up on the street." "That's enough, Deborah." The voice boomed from the hallway. Mom froze. Her eyes slowly moved past me, widening in genuine horror. Marcus stepped into the room. He looked like a giant in the dim light. "You," she whispered. It was the first time I had ever seen her look afraid. "It's over," Marcus said calmly. "We have the files. We have the recording of you blackmailing her. And we have Tyler's statement." She whipped her head around to look at the hallway where Tyler was cowering. "You traitor," she spat at him. "I did this for you." "No," Marcus said, stepping between her and me. "You did this for control, but you lost. Jenna, go." "I'm calling the police," she shrieked, backing toward her nightstand phone. "Go ahead," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "Tell them to come. I have 20 years of evidence waiting for them. Do you really want to open that door, Deborah?" Her hand hovered over the phone. She looked at me, then at Marcus, then at the shattered glass on the floor. She realized she was cornered. "Get out," she rasped. "Get out of my house." "Gladly," I said. I walked past her holding the iPad like a shield. I didn't look back. I walked out of that room, down the hall, and out the front door into the rain. The air had never tasted so sweet. The rain finally stopped by the time we reached the highway. The silence in the car wasn't heavy anymore. It was the quiet exhaustion of soldiers coming home from a war they had finally won. I looked over at Marcus, my dad. For the first time in 20 years, the word didn't feel like a question mark. It felt like a fact. The next morning, we walked into the hospital administration office at 8 a.m. sharp. My HR director, a stern woman named Mrs. Higgins, looked ready to escort me off the premises. But before she could speak, Marcus laid the iPad on her desk. We didn't just show her the files, we showed her the metadata. We played the recording of my mother's voice explicitly trading my job for her son's debt. We showed the timestamp screenshots of the falsified patient logs created on a device registered to Deborah Mitchell. Mrs. Higgins listened in silence. By the time the recording ended, her face had softened from professional rigidity to horrified sympathy. "Jenna," she said, closing the folder, "I'm so sorry. Consider the suspension expunged immediately. We'll need to file a police report regarding the false claims to protect the hospital's liability, but your job is safe." I walked out of that office and took the deepest breath of my life. The weight that had been crushing my chest for weeks simply evaporated. But the victory wasn't just professional. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. A notification from my bank. Deposit $4,300 source, Deborah Mitchell. She had returned every cent. Marcus had sent her a text that morning. Return the money by noon or the recording goes to the district attorney. Fear, it turned out, was the only language she spoke fluently. A week later, I was sitting on my porch, the same porch where she had stood and condemned me. But this time, I wasn't alone. Marcus was sitting in the rocking chair opposite me, nursing a mug of tea. He wasn't leaving. He had rented a small apartment 10 minutes away. We were learning each other again slowly, filling in the 20-year gap one story at a time. "What about Tyler?" I asked, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of purple and gold. "He's in a program," Dad said. "He finally realized that Mom's help was killing him faster than the alcohol. He's got a long road, but he's walking it on his own 2 feet this time. And Mom? Alone," he said simply. "She has her house. She has her pride, but she doesn't have her victims anymore." I looked out at the street. It looked different now. It didn't look like a place to hide. It looked like a starting line. Mom had tried to bury me. She tried to strip me of my money, my career, and my family. She thought that by telling me to leave, she was sentencing me to exile. She didn't realize she was setting me free. I took a sip of my tea and smiled at my father. "You know," I said softly, "she was right about one thing." Dad raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" She told me, "Don't come back." I looked at the empty spot on the driveway where her car used to sit, looming like a predator. I thought about the guilt, the manipulation, the endless debt of being her daughter. I thought about the woman I was becoming, stronger, richer in spirit, and surrounded by real love, not the conditional kind. "And I won't," I whispered. "I'm never going back to who I was when I let her control me." I had lost a mother, yes, but I had found my father, my freedom, and myself, and that was a trade I would make 1,000 times over.